Emily Fleming. We were just saying that we've been in each other's orbits for such a long time, for many, many years, and we've never actually met in person. So it's a true gift to hang out with you. Our worlds are very similar. We're passionate about the similar things. We're both looking at how to get yoga into schools, all those kind of things. But today, what I want to focus on, Emily, is your work around working with large organizations and teaching yoga in summer school. So, because this is something that I'll speak about it later, but in our community, Emily, just to give you some context, we have a lot of, kids yoga teachers and educators who are looking to make extra money in the summer, right? And so to get started, please share with us, your background, your passion, and what have you been up to since we last chatted?
Yeah. So thank you for having me. I am excited that we're just connecting. Finally, I feel like we have years of stuff
Yeah,
to catch up on. So
totally.
I was a classroom teacher for 11 years. I taught middle school, both in Chicago and then here in Baltimore. And I had also, when I was in college, I did my 200-hour yoga teacher training. And I really guess my journey started because as a first-year teacher teaching in Chicago, teaching special education, I was incredibly stressed out, burned out, just trying to honestly get myself through the day. And yoga was a very natural tool for me to bring into the classroom and to bring into my work with students. And it was something that even just 2 or 3 minutes of, a break between activities or starting class with some breath, like really made a huge difference and allowed me to find some space, some calm, and also allowed my students to find that. So after 3 years of teaching special education in Chicago, I knew I wanted to stay in the classroom, but I also knew I wanted to teach something that I was really passionate about. And I saw this need for more mindfulness and yoga in schools. And so I went on a journey and decided I was going to find a principal who would hire me as a classroom teacher, but to teach yoga and mindfulness. And fairly certain most people thought that I was a little bit, uh, pie in the sky, like that's never going to happen. But I got connected with the principal that I worked with here in Baltimore. And he said, well, I know you know how to manage a classroom. Um, he had an open enrichment position. So he had had a Spanish teacher who left. He said, this isn't adding a position. It's not costing me any more money. I'm going to bring you in. I'll let you teach yoga for a semester. If it's terrible, I'll still keep you as a teacher, but you're going to teach special ed. And so I said, all right, I'm just going to figure this out. And that led me to develop a 3-year curriculum that I use to bring mindfulness and yoga into the classroom as tools to teach SEL competencies and other character strengths like empathy. I taught middle school, so empathy was a big one, especially for our 7th graders. And then year 11 was the 22-23 school year. I had done a business accelerator program in 21-22 and had really gotten clear on I want to stay in education. I was burned out. I'm an introvert, so teaching and being in front of children all day was very draining for me. And so I said, you know what? I've been working with teachers, I've been coaching, I've been supporting teachers, and I also saw how having a really customized, integrated mindfulness and yoga program in our school transformed our school culture as a whole. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to leave the classroom. I'm going to full-time like work on this business. And so here I am almost 2 years later, and just figuring it out as I go. But yeah, working with schools, working with teachers, developing customized curriculum, training teachers to bring mindfulness and yoga into the classroom, also working, with other educators, right? So not just teachers, paraprofessionals, enrichment, out of school time providers, summer programs, just trying to bring more of these tools to folks who work with our young people.
I love that. I love it so much. There's so much about your journey too that I want to highlight because we've been having this discussion with our Kids Yoga Stories community about sort of what's working and what's not working right now, right? And that we really do have a choice, although there's a lot of reasons that a lot of limiting beliefs about why we say we don't have choice, right? And we won't go into that, but the focus here is on what's working. And what you're describing is you started with yourself as a teacher. And you're bringing the tools into the classroom, not just for the students, but for you. You know, like that's a moment to think, okay, what's going to work for me? These ancient practices are working for me. How do I naturally put it into my school day for me? And as a result, you're making your classroom more calm and organized, that you're modeling with them. And so I don't know that we've actually said it out loud in that regard of starting with yourself. What's going to work for yourself first? And then I also love how you said, okay, great. So this isn't going to work for me. I'm an introvert, you know, it's a lot. And what's my ideal, right? What's my ideal job? And then you look for that, right? Or you created a job for yourself. I mean, that would have taken a lot of courage, right? A lot of stepping into the unknown, a lot of not really sure what's going to happen here, right? And then speaking up to the principal and saying, here are my needs, here's what I can offer. And then it worked. And then the next step, you saw, okay, now I'm living my dream job. What's next? Right? And then you're looking at how do I have this more scalable? How do I impact more classrooms, more districts, more schools? I just think that's amazing, Emily. Like I can only imagine what's going to happen next for you if this was kind of like step 1, step 2, step 3, and then here you go, right? It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see. I'm like, worlds, are we really revamping the education system in this country? I think that's my next pie in the sky dream, so to speak, is to, all right, we try so much in education and there's so much that for one reason or another isn't successful. And I think for me, I see all the benefits of this for teachers and students and families. And my challenge, right, is all right, let's do this. Let's really see if we can overhaul the system.
Yeah, I love that so much. Now, one area which we do have more flexibility is at summertime, right? And so thinking about summer camps as a place in which children are already there, just like the classrooms, right? Like schools. Now, some kids who are teachers and, pediatric therapists, counselors, whatever, looking for a job in the summertime, they will create their own classes, create their own summer camps, but that can be very overwhelming. And what I love what you're doing is that you're already approaching large organizations who have the enrollment, who have the funds, right? Who have the space, right? And possibly the need, because there's a piece in the schedule. So tell us a little bit more. How do you go about securing the job of a summer kids yoga instructor?
I think for me, I was an educator for a long time. So I knew of a lot of programs because my students took advantage of those programs either during the school year or in the summer. And there oftentimes happens to be overlap between out of school time providers during the school year. A lot of them also run summer programs. So I really started in leveraging my own network, right? What were the organizations that I knew about that were providing summer programming in Baltimore? And then it was really about having conversations with those site directors, program directors. And what I found is there's a lot of desire, at least in where I live, for mindfulness, for yoga, for supporting students with emotional regulation during the summer, because a lot of the same structures that school provides during the year aren't there. And so I had a lot of conversations with folks, and my first client actually was a summer program that is really big in Baltimore. And I, had a conversation with the site director at one of their schools, and she said, yes, great. I know you know yoga. I know what our students need. Can you design something that is going to help with impulse control with our students? So I guess the second part of that, my answer would be, in your conversation, don't just approach it as you pitching yourself to a program. Have a conversation. Listen to what you're hearing from the summer program director. What do they need? What are they looking for? And then go in, and then you tailor what you're offering to what their needs are, right? It's great to have a plug and play program over here, but you're going to have a lot more impact, a lot more success if you can tailor what you're offering to the needs, the desires, the goals of a summer program. So those would kind of be my two pieces of advice, so to speak, of how I really got in the door, was leveraging my network and then listening and creating a program that was customized to that summer program.
I love that so much. I love it so much. So the leveraging your network. So for folks who are listening, thinking, oh, well, I don't necessarily have a network yet, or I don't know who to approach, or, I'm not like Emily. Well, don't forget, for those listeners, Emily said she's an introvert. So it's not like you're the kind of person that you're out there and you've got that sort of outwardly confidence, right? I'm sure it takes something to have these conversations, right? And then in terms of network, right, it's about using maybe Facebook groups in your community, right? Or if you're a parent, what are other parents doing? Or, there's a lot of different ways that we can ask for help. So we kind of look at our inner circle of our friends and family and colleagues, and then that outer circle. So certainly lots of different ways. And then my heart was singing when you said about customizing, because so true. You're speaking my language. In our school yoga program, that's why we developed it, is to help people customize the programs to meet the needs and preferences of their community. You're absolutely right that it's all about listening to what the needs are to make that match, not just showing up with, here's my cookie cutter curriculum. Those days are gone, right? That it's really about how do we tailor it to the specific needs. That yoga is more than just standing up and stretching, but you're talking about the more deeper aspect of yoga mindfulness, which encompasses the mental, social, emotional, and spiritual aspects, right? So talk us through, once you're secured your contract, right? How are you designing your classes? Are they always a certain length of time, or do you always have a beginning, middle, end? Give us a sort of an example of what it might look like.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, timing, the length of class is going to vary based on summer program and the time slot that they're putting me in. I would say generally they're from 30 to 60 minutes, and at least once a week during the summer. I structure my classes probably more like an educator than others, because that's just the background that I have. So I always start with a quick warm up, right? Something that is sitting on mats when students come in that they can answer immediately. So it could be, write down 3 things that you're grateful for today, or if your emotions were the weather, what weather would you be today and why? Something that they can come in, they sit down, they do it, and that usually ties in with the general theme for the lesson. We'll talk about the warm-up, and then again, the educator in me, I do a little mini lesson, right? What is our topic of conversation that day? What is the skill? What is the objective that we have? Is it, I'm going to use the example of responding versus reacting, right? That's a lesson that I taught a lot, especially when I taught 6th graders. So what is a response? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? We're listing examples. We're possibly doing some role playing, right? And then a reaction. What does that look like, sound like? Role playing that. And then I tie that to yoga and mindfulness, right? Okay, how can these tools, these practices help us move from reacting, right? Reacting without thinking, to pausing, responding and taking a breath before we then, take action or handle a situation that's in front of us. So I usually do warm up, mini lesson, and then when I teach, the yoga, it's usually something that's related to what that theme was, right? So responding versus reacting, I would generally do poses that are calming that can help us to regulate versus, right? I'm not doing back bends in that lesson because back bends tend to be energizing for a lot of folks, and that's the opposite energy that we want. So I try to really be intentional too about, I'm not just picking random poses. I'm being very intentional about what postures are going to support, the objective of the lesson. And then I'll usually do, we'll end with some breath work, end with Savasana, and then I'll do a final wrap up, closing, exit ticket, check for understanding, so to speak, before I have students pack up and leave. So I may be very unconventional. That's what works for me. That's my teacher lens. But
No, perfect.
I I found that, and you spoke to it earlier, right? Of this, yoga is not just movement. Like, it is movement, and the movement is great, and the movement is important, and especially for kids who are sitting all day. But it's more than that. And so how do we bring depth into the practices? And that's something that I'd love to see kids yoga teachers do more of, is structure with intention and bring the depth in.
I love that so much. So can you give us an example? Because it's always, in summer camp or in classrooms, it's always about how do we prove this works? How do we prove that there's a result here or is an impact? Do you have a story from maybe a class or a student who during that summer experience you thought, yes, this is proof that this work is working?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have so many of those. I will say, just to speak to more of a tangible way that I assess that, I do a pre-survey. I do a survey the first day of class, and then I do one on the last day, and I have students self-assess. And so, hey, self-assessments may not be the most scientific, but I also think there's a lot of power in a 12-year-old being able to name and explain, I use this practice, this strategy at home when I'm feeling frustrated because it helps me calm down and then I don't react to my siblings, right? That's huge. So I do that. I mean, I've seen so much of it. I will say, I think last summer is a good example. So last summer, I worked with the same group of boys that I had worked with the summer before. So they were fourth graders. The first summer I worked with them, they were fifth graders this past summer. And when they were in fourth grade, a lot of them had never done yoga before. I was getting a lot of resistance to yoga. I don't want to do this. I just want to be outside playing because it's summer. And I will say overall, I had one student in particular who I had again last summer, who it totally coalesced for him in year 2 in a way that it didn't in year 1. He, the first summer, came in and I was always having to sit next to him and having to have private conversations with him and incentivize him to participate or to sit up. And last summer, his hand was always shooting up first. He wanted to answer every single question. He wanted to demonstrate poses. So I think that for me is like right there, right? This is something that even just in engagement and buy-in, that's an example for me of, okay, he's getting something out of it. He doesn't just like this because he gets to move, but he's getting something else from it. And that was really cool for me to see, was this total 180 in, okay, I know what I'm doing this summer. I can talk about and share examples of how I'm using, yoga and mindfulness at home when I get home after a long day. Um, so that was really cool for me.
Yeah, I love that too, because there's a couple things. Again, it has to come, it comes back to you, Emily, is that, in that situation where it was hard, you kept going. You didn't give up on the children, right? And so there's something about who you were being in that moment and for the summer and for the summer after to allow that child the time and space in which to arrive to the practice at his own time and journey, right? And that's a lot. It can be one of these things where we so desperately want to make a difference with children, right? And it can be so difficult to get through to some children that it can be easy to be very frustrated and annoyed and irritated and angry and disappointed and all those big feelings about some children's behavior, which these
100%.
days is a lot larger than I can say than it was years ago. But what I'm hearing you say is that you just kept showing up for this child. And it's a common story that the children who we think are not getting anything out of it are the ones who made the biggest difference, right? The old saying, the children who need the most love show it in the most unloving of way, right?
Mhm.
Of ways. So, kudos to you for sticking it out and giving this child what he needed.
Yeah, thank you. And I love that you named that, right? Because I talk to so many kids yoga teachers and even educators who are, want to bring mindfulness and yoga into the classroom. And there's this, oh, but like, I have 3 or 4 kids in class who are lying down or they're, not following directions. Um, how do I, how do I engage them more? And well, that's a great question to be asking, right? We want to be asking that question. You can't assume that they're not engaging. I have another story of a 7th grade student who would come in my room and, he would, oh, he was just not engaged. He was talking to other people. He was lying down. He was napping. And I called his mom at the end of the semester for some reason about something had happened in my classroom and I needed to call her, right? We have routines, we have consequences, even in yoga. Kids need to know that what are appropriate behaviors and what are non-negotiable behaviors in order to really create a container for them to feel like they can relax and settle. And so I called his mom about something and she goes, "In yoga?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "That's his favorite class. What are you talking about?" And I
Huh.
said, "Really?" And she goes, "Oh my gosh, he comes home every single day and he teaches me yoga and we do it together." And it was one of those moments of here's a student who's presenting as outwardly resistant, outwardly not engaged, who is going home. And for whatever reason, home is where he felt like he wanted to practice yoga or he wanted to integrate what he had learned in class. And so I shared that story of you're not going to get every student, and it's okay that you have a student who's lying down in class or who's not paying attention all the time because they're still absorbing it and they're going to come to it on their own time and in their own way. And that's okay. We have to take ourselves as the teachers out of it. It's not about us, it's about them.
Oh, I love that so much. What a great story, right? We don't even know the impact we're making. And by planting these seeds, we don't know what's to come. And I think it also speaks to, Emily, this idea that we're in a society of quick fixes. That, if we're going to a classroom or we're teaching a group where we don't connect with them right away, or it's not working right away, then we feel a sense of failure, or it's our fault, or, we can't engage or whatever. But I think that speaks to this practice that is thousands of years old, right? That the work is going to work. All you have to do is show up and be a guide, right?
100%. Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing from you is, I mean, every time you say a middle schooler, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm an elementary school teacher, taught most, through fourth and fifth recently, but middle schoolers, I mean, you're a saint in my mind. I can't imagine.
It's all I ever taught, and so as frustrating as middle schoolers can be sometimes, like that's my sweet spot. I feel like I can walk into a room of middle schoolers and I'm like, okay,
I see
like
you.
what I see you, like what are you gonna throw at me? Like I'm ready for it, right? Because I feel like I've seen it all. But really like teaching is all about relationships, and that's what it comes down to, is not just showing up as I'm a yoga teacher and I'm going to come in here for an hour a week or an hour every day and teach you this and then leave. But how can you connect? How can you build a relationship with each student? Because that's going to inform the collective experience of the class. And the same is true if you look, right? If we think about us as adults and going to yoga, right? We're going to go to the yoga classes with the teachers that we feel like we connect with because we have a relationship with them, because they know our name, because, we know that they also like to read the same type of books. Like relationships are important. And so how can you build those first and foremost? I think that's the key to having a successful program.
Oh, I love that. So what you've shared so much. So what advice do you have for those kids yoga teachers or educators who, are looking to teach yoga mindfulness in summer camps with students, but really they don't know where to start, they don't know how to plan it, and they don't ultimately know how to sort of be successful in that role?
I think that's a great question. I would say start doing your research now, right? We're at the time where it's March, summer is fast approaching. Identify the programs that align with you, right? So what are your interests? Is there a marine biology summer camp that you feel really drawn towards? What is an environment that you would love showing up to every day or once a week during the summer and teaching in? So identify that, do that research, talk to people in your community, find that program or those programs, and then go and have a conversation with them. And then honestly, it's all about taking that next step forward, right? Of, okay, you did that. Now what, right? If I think back to when I started teaching in Baltimore, I got this job, and then I had no curriculum that I was going to teach. I was like, okay, I got this job. Now I have an entire year where I have to fill every single day. What am I going to do? And there was a lot of fear there. And there was a lot of, what did I just get myself into? And so I think the next step, the advice I would have is just, you have to start somewhere, right? And so start somewhere, get your foot in the door, be really transparent. Hey, I haven't done this before, or I've done this, but I only worked with first and second graders, and this is my first time working with middle school. Most folks in education, most folks who are running these summer programs are going to understand, and they're going to want to support you and work with you. And so be really transparent about that. And don't be afraid to throw everything at the wall and figure out what works for you, right? There's no formula for what it looks like. There were days even in year 11 of teaching where I used every single teaching tool in my toolbox and none of them worked. then I'd have to be like, all right, I'm going back to the drawing board. I have to figure out how I'm going to get these students to, understand this lesson, or how am I going to bring the energy in the room back to this. That's teaching, right? It's a process of iteration. So don't be afraid to take the scary step, throw everything at the wall, and see what sticks. I think that would be my biggest advice. You just have to start somewhere. And you'll learn very quickly.
I love it. I love it so much, Emily. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your experiences. So how do we find you online, and what's next for you?
Sure. So you can find me at yogainclassroomsandschools.com. That's also my Instagram handle, yoga in classrooms and schools. It is a mouthful, I know. And I also offer one-on-one mentorship for kids yoga teachers, for educators who want that support of, hey, I need help lesson planning, or I want to talk through behavior management strategies. I love those conversations. And then otherwise, I'm out here working with schools, providing professional development for teachers, speaking at conferences on all things mindfulness and yoga and education, and really how we can tie them into a school day and an existing program, to create, more impactful and sustainable programming. So yeah, yogaInclassroomsandschools.com, Yoga in Classrooms and Schools on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with folks there and be a part of your journey. That's probably the part of this work that I love the most, is getting to support other educators as they bring mindfulness and yoga to students.
Thank you so much, Emily. So appreciate you, and so looking forward to getting back in closer touch as well. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you, Giselle.